All right, well, thanks everybody for making the trek out here to the conference center. It's a little bit of an interesting journey to find, so I appreciate you coming out to find us. Today we're going to give an intro to the SAFE working group / security working group inside the CNCF. SAFE stands for Secure Access for All. For everyone, my goodness, right? If you're familiar with the acronym that's behind SPIFFE, it's kind of a derivative concept from that, in that, we've also, that's led us to embrace, a concept a little bit farther beyond security, we have some folks that are engaged with NIST and beyond, where safety is a primary concern. So that kind of odd acronym has led us towards security and safety as real considerations in what we do.
Yeah, and we'll talk about a little bit as we get into the kind of group objective. But I've done a lot of work in developing application layer tools, developer tools, and platforms. And it turns out that there's a wide swath of security concerns, and sometimes at the bare bones service layer, security is defined to be surface-to-surface communication. However, application developers today who are living in this cloud-native world have to worry about end-user security. And then when you get to end-user security, what does exactly that mean? It's what are you doing with their data? It has privacy issues and safety issues. And so we really want to get at the edges of security. And if we aren't really solving it for the people who use the software, like the developers, the people who don't write code who use the software, the security officers, all of the people who need their security needs addressed, then we're only doing a partial solution. And so that's really where this SAFE acronym came from, is we're really thinking about it for everyone and then reasoning at the different layers of the stack around how to do that.
Right on. So, let's look at some of our humans here. JJ unfortunately couldn't be with us. Jeyappragash. You may know JJ from Istio. He's ex-Twitter. He is working to commercialize some of the Istio work in Tetrite.io. Then I'll let Sarah introduce herself, and I'll introduce myself.
Alan. I go by Ultrasaurus on all the things. Very large dinosaur, but isn't really. And I am working at Google now. My team is, I have a few teams responsible for infrastructure inside Google, doing event-driven programming, the events that drive Google Cloud Functions, which have different security concerns than the typical request response. And I also lead a team that does Firebase Rules, which is direct access from the client, which also has different security concerns. So that kind of led me to being interested in, what are all the different concerns about security, and as those systems start to be adopted by the enterprise, how does that dovetail with traditional security models? So I also, the slide notes that I'm X18F. That is a U.S. government program that is part of the General Services Administration. It grew out of the Obama administration's kind of tech, innovation, and government thing. And it turns out that the government has a lot of security concerns that get in the way of producing good software quickly. And so a lot of my interest in SAFE also stems from that work, where how can we make it easy to address security concerns without impeding developer velocity? And so, that's my background.
Nice. And I'm danshaw. I'm recently at PayPal, where I'm global head of developer relations. Prior to joining PayPal, I served as CTO and founder of NodeSource, so securing application infrastructure, the runtime, kind of building enterprise infrastructure around the Node.js runtime. And before that, I was a defense contractor, so spent a decade doing defense and healthcare. Lean heavily on that experience of building out really locked down applications in the not so cloudy space. And with SAFE, we really bring together this interesting blend of application insight, infrastructure insight, and a fair amount of that's institutional experience. In the cloud native world, what I found is some of the deepest insight into kind of the challenges that we have ahead of us are coming from some of these institutional groups, NIST and the other government groups, where they're really forced to federate. They don't have the option to greenfield and let's push forward into new space. They want to move forward into the cloud ecosystem, but they have to federate to existing infrastructure. We bring together a good mix of folks that allow us to focus on a really hard problem.
So it turns out that that when you think about cloud native security in the cloud today, it's very rare that you have a piece of software that doesn't connect to anything else. If you think about like any real world scenario, the likelihood that you could have like a Kubernetes cluster where all of your stuff that you need is only within that cluster is, I only know like experimental demo apps for which that is true. I don't actually know of any real world scenario where you don't have to connect to some other cloud thing, and more frequently you have to connect to your legacy on-premise thing or some managed service that you are required to connect to, and you just have to figure out how to make this crazy security thing work with your beautiful security architecture that you designed and you would like to impose it on the world, but the world is in a different place. So that's really why why it's really important for the security group to have a knowledge of the rest of the world and where it is, because we're not going to get to cloud native by just saying, oh, you have to live in this new world. We're not going to connect to any of your old worlds. Good luck with that. Everybody move to the cloud world while leaving your old world behind, right? It's a transition and it takes time. I think we already talked about safety.
Great. Let's move on. Okay, so let's get into the objective of our working group. So with the SAFE working group, as we move all of our infrastructure to this cloud ecosystem, in the past we've had administrators, and we've been able to sort of cordon off certain areas of precious resources. But the reality is when we're in a cloud environment, we have the actual operators of the infrastructure, possibly N layers of administration. So local administration, team administration, and coordination within various groups, developing their services, application developers, infosec teams. And so, we really, explode the problem of security into, a problem that, everyone's trying to, get a real picture of what the elephant is. And most folks are only dealing with a small portion of the reality that serves their need at any given time. And it is kind of the forming concept of this working group that we need to build first for security in a cloud native ecosystem. Otherwise, there's no chance that we're going to be able to coalesce together and really be able to cooperate. We've seen challenges in OpenStack where that was a concern that was left to vendors to handle primarily, and there was a lot of pain in interoperability, and ultimately it ends up even making security is already a hard problem to integrate and put in, but if there's no clear path to what one should do with security, then we're going to be even farther behind.
So I want to unpack the objective a little bit because we worked hard on it and it probably
really
still use some help. So you are welcome to submit a PR if you have some wordsmithing to do. But I'll try to explain sort of how we came about this. So first off, kind of what we've already talked about quite a bit is the end. Starting at the end, we are worried about these concerns for operators, administrators, developers, and end users. So we're not going to be producing resources for end users, I believe. Certainly that's not a priority. However, we want to produce the resources that would allow the people who are users of cloud native technology to do the right thing for their end users. And when I say end users here, and we have to do some wordsmithing, I think, because the Cloud Native Foundation calls end users
not vendors, right?
That use cloud technology. So I don't know what the word is for the humans who use the things that the cloud native end users produce.
End users.
So we'll have to work on that. But in this context, we mean people who are not coders who use apps that are in the cloud. And then we struggled a lot with policy, right? Like secure access, I think is straightforward. That's a good word. We started to say that word secure access in there. Policy, it turns out, has a really broad set of meanings. And so you can end up having a discussion about every config file in your system as a kind of policy. And so when we're talking about policy, we're not talking about, the English word policy could be used to describe your font settings, but we're not talking about that, right? We're talking about policy that we came up with the word policy control, meaning that the policies that control your security and control things in this domain. And then safety, a lot of people have a discomfort with that word because they feel like it is too broad. Some people felt like risk mitigation is a much better set of words to use because it's achievable, because you can never really be safe on the internet or anywhere.
But safety is a positive term. Right, risk mitigation is we're always dealing with a thing, and safety has a nice tone to it. With it, when we're working in safety, we're considering the positive case that we've done the hard work and we've set things up the way they should be.
Yeah, so we are seeking to enable that. We are not promising that we will achieve that. We want resources for people who are seeking that. And so one of the ideas when we were struggling with this wordsmithing that Sarah Novotny, who is one of the leaders of the CNCF community, I forgot her title, but she's awesome, and she really helps kind of work through a lot of this, who are we, what do we do? And she advised us to describe what do we want, after SAFE exists, and we're all doing the things we want to do, what happens? And so we described this vision of a future where operators, administrators, and developers feel confident creating new cloud-native applications. They use cloud technologies with a clear understanding of risks and the ability to validate that their security policy decisions are reflected in the code software. So this gets more at the meat of what we think is achievable. That in the world today, because a lot of this stuff is new and it's not really that new, a lot of this work is sort of like, oh, people have been thinking about these concepts for 30 years, but people have been actively practicing them holistically in systems together as widely as they are today. And because of that, you have a lot of people in these roles who have played different roles or who are new to the industry, and they are now trusted with decisions that typically they would not have been trusted with in the past. And a lot of that is a lack of awareness of exactly what are all the knobs and dials that you need. And, like, if you want to secure your AWS cloud deployment or your Google cloud deployment or your whatever cloud thing, like, you kind of need a PhD in the configuration of that. And it's a problem, right? And all of our nouns and verbs aren't the same, and we use words like identity to describe service identity and human identity and machine identity.
Workload identities.
Workload identities. And these things have nuance to how they're different, but the same identity system could be used for any of the things. And if you give somebody a tool and you say, you can use it for anything, then that person needs to learn that tool and everything it can be used for before they understand how to use it in their use case. And so we believe that we can come up with that there are common patterns that some of us are very deeply familiar with, to the point that we forget that everybody doesn't think these are common patterns, and this is actually a minority of the people writing code on the internet today. And so we need to engage with the people who are newer to cloud, or to understand what is the gap between those of us who are very experienced and the people coming to new cloud, and align also some of us who are very experienced and use different words for the same thing, or disagree on what is the right thing to do. And so as the SAFE working group, we are explicitly not dictating what is right. We actually think that there are a set of things that are wrong that we can all agree with. Like this is a vulnerability. However, depending on your risk profile, something that is wrong for a HIPAA-compliant healthcare app might not be wrong for, a web app with entirely public data and no login, right? And so the different practices fit different situations, and sorting through that is, it's not always exciting work, but the outcome is exciting because we can start having more meaningful conversations and stop having the same arguments over and over again about things that are not as interesting as the really big problems we have.
So, to address those problems, we've really, we've been working together for just over a year, and we've brought together a really incredible contingent of folks. We meet every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific, and have representation from some of the best folks across the industry. A lot of vendors, but also security professionals, and I really love the mix of more institutional folks, representatives that are deeply engaged in some of the NIST working groups. Really bring a different perspective, as many of us are kind of looking at the leading edge. They're pulling together that perspective that is really balancing things out.
I also want to point out, Dan has done a great job of tracking the different groups in our ecosystem. So there's a number of Kubernetes SIGs that focus on the same concerns for Kubernetes and are deeply engaged in that. We focus on the breadth of cloud-native technologies where somebody may or may not be using Kubernetes, and so we have people from the community, Kubernetes SIGs, actively involved in SAFE, so that we can learn about what they're learning from Kubernetes users, and they can learn about what we're learning from people who are using different systems, so that we can collect these common patterns and kind of like inform those things. And so there are other groups that are much more expansive than we are that are like addressing like the NIST is like physical security and the security of the hardware on your IoT device and what's your car gonna do, and like that might touch our world, but we are firmly in the cloud native.
Right, and a couple individuals I want to call out. Our folks, from our banking contingent, Synchrony and Fifth Third Bank, are boots on the ground managing their infrastructure. So it's really great to to have the perspective of folks that are looking to apply the practices that we're introducing to everybody. So that's getting that diversity of contribution and participation is fantastic, and it was great when the Kubernetes policy working group this year they decided we need to address a broader spectrum of effort and bring things to CNCF level, extend beyond Kubernetes, and so we were able to join forces with them and collaborate together in this working group. So I'd like to share with you a few of our initiatives. We have a few main projects going on. We've come together and done a lot of work over the past year to basically do discovery. Listen. We regularly invite companies and projects to present in our working groups meetings to get their perspective of the challenges that they're working with, and in the case of vendors, the solutions that they're trying to address. And so as we integrate with the bigger picture of all the stuff that's going on with the CNCF. One of the first initiatives that we started in this second phase is trying to distill down what the security landscape, what the SAFE landscape is for this ecosystem. Jerry has been spearheading this effort, and it's a massive challenge to distill down where the edges are in this edgeless and sort of infinite, ever expanding ecosystem. But those that are those folks that are looking to embrace a cloud native workflow need explicit guidelines, and so the landscape effort is an attempt to bring together the perspectives of all the tools that we have available to us, understand which of the tools are going to help us solve the problems that we need to address, and help walk folks through a path to cloud native security.
So I'm going to interrupt you again, and I'm going to say a little bit about the
Please.
research project that we're kicking off, and then I want to open the floor to questions, and so we can go deeper into. We have another slide on compliance, and we have a little bit more information on how to join the working group. But let's kind of wrap that at the end, and
cool.
The questions go there.
Great.
And I'll just the last part of our prepared talk is we want to make sure. I think, like we said, like our resources are valuable, and that's a real challenge. And that this landscape challenge is really hard because it's really easy to have people have strong opinions about this and that category, and to some degree, nobody really cares that much, except that they really care when we get it wrong. And how do you exactly do that? And so Jerry's valiantly gone through and created a massive spreadsheet of all these things, and we were having trouble landing in it, right? How do we say, and we were kind of having trouble, are we going to bless that? And
right.
What does that mean? And so we're going to take this up at our next working group meeting. But what we decided is, so we had the same sort of challenge with the personas and use cases. So I sought out some advice from user researchers, and we came up with a way to validate our personas and use cases with a survey of people doing security work. And I'll ask what they do, and see if it matches our personas and use cases, and maybe it changes their language a little bit, maybe validate how they think about their role. You know, it probably has all the same content, but maybe it's presented differently, more about how people think about their work, or maybe it's exactly right because this all comes from people who do this work. And so we want to take the same approach to the landscape, where we've categorized there are certain things that we know in CNCF are for security, right? The security providers. And then we have almost every other project needs security.
Right.
So what do those projects actually implement, right? Like, that's one question. And then the projects in the CNCF are probably not all of the tools that the CNCF end users use.
Right.
So we have this idea that we want to propose to the CNCF TOC, or the folks that manage the end user community, and say, like, could we do a survey where we ask them, what are they doing for security? What are the products they need to use? What are the open source projects that they use? What are their pain points? What are the things they wish that somebody would build? And then maybe some of the projects in the CNCF want to make those things work for our end users. And it's just a tremendous opportunity to gather some data. And so we're like, okay, well, let's propose that we quickly accept this as a draft. And then part of our process is that we validate it with some kind of data gathering. So with that, I'd like to open the floor for questions. And we can talk more. Wait. Can you repeat your question? Mike?
By all means. So perhaps there is a lot of commonality between two fundamentals of the privacy expectations and these kind of things, encryption, transit, rest, the common requirements you would see for any given standard or framework. I wonder if there's room in somewhere to essentially present threat models of these things and make it more of a CISO level to something that can then be active controls, and then full end-to-end. Yeah, just a different presentation mechanism. I'm not sure which of those initiatives is up there.
Actually, if you can flip to that compliance slide. So actually, why don't you just give, we'll get back to the question, but why don't you give an overview of how this came about and the kind of work with
Right. So the TOC has been looking to really serve the the entire ecosystem with regard to security, and you need subject matter expertise in that. Alexis handed us off a project, really interesting project called In Toto, that does comprehensive audit of every system in your tool chain, and that project has been kind of the use case and testing ground for us to build out kind of an initial community vetting, right? There's security compliance testing that is a process that pay a vendor to get involved in, but the community standards and kind of peer audit of what the expectations are is something that is being entrusted with, and I'm loud already. And with the SAFE working group, the work that was done previously to bring Spiffy and Spire into the project is being used as a bit of the model for us to adapt and to learn from. So I expect some of that CIO material will come, the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts, and then that right now we're focused a little bit more on the edges and the pain points amongst the projects.
Well, what I was thinking about is, so Liz Rice has taken this process that was done, actually somebody from Entoto did it for Spiffy,
Right.
and then we're like, well, let's go through the same process for Entoto, although they're like kind of informing it, but then we have other security experts who are like, okay, what are all the questions you have to think about, right? And so our compliance, it's sort of like a compliance checklist where the project needs to produce all of the information about how they think about security and what their use cases are. And it's really like an exercise for a project to think about its own security. And then from that, we can then kind of help them advertise what they're intending to achieve with security, which then of course would imply some controls. And so in getting into these details, of course it brings this up, like, what's your risk profile?
Mm-hmm.
What things are you concerned about? And so there's a lot of great resources, and so we're working on making sure that all of our resources are footnoted with things that we had found valuable in the process, so that people can refer to those if they choose. They can, like they can add more footnotes if they think that there are better resources. And we are not choosing the one threat model reasoning process to rule them all. We are helping people by providing a framework where they may or may not have security experts, but even if they have security experts, having a framework where every CNCF project describes itself in the same kind of language with the same type of process is of great value to people evaluating projects. And so in that work, to get back to your question about threat models, where what we've talked about, what came up in a recent working group meeting is that maybe we create sort of a ladder of risk profiles. And then the guidance about what you might be thinking about in terms of security varies, from I have a website with no login and just public data, which still needs security controls because, you don't want your website to go down because somebody's mad at you, all the way to like, you're in a highly regulated industry, and that each of those things has a different set of security concerns where each one probably has all the ones below it until you get into financial and HIPAA, and that's their own roles. But I think if we can come up with these conceptual pieces, right? Oh, you have a login. Here's a whole set of things you have to worry about. You don't have a login. You don't have to worry about those. And so on.
Shall we?
Oh, wait.
So I have a very basic question. If the output of SAFE is meant to provide guidelines and risk profiles to existing CNCF projects, or that it goes beyond this, it provide some auditing tools to audit the security?
That's a great question.
So I think that our first focus is to make sure that the CNCF projects have what they need, balanced by we have people who want to use those projects who need to use things that are not CNCF projects. So we need to address how things work, like things that the CNCF happens to be hosting work with things that are existing in the world. And so we're really trying to grapple with that first. But I think a bunch of us aspire, I know I do, to automate a whole bunch of things that the humans are doing. Because it's just, we live in a world, and this is one of the things that, I went to talk to JJ last November about, getting more involved in the open source community around security, and he was like, you should start this group. And I was like, oh, I got things to do, I'm busy, last thing I need is to, facilitate one of these groups. But it turns out, in the conversation, we had, a somewhat, friendly disagreement about security. And what I realized is that no one vendor or one project can solve this alone, right? And so we need to read, that sort of enterprise I was talking about. You have your stuff in cloud native, and then, your business person says, you must use this API. We have a business partnership with this person who has a different security philosophy. Or all your automated compliance checks go out the window, right? Whereas I think everybody would love there to be some kind of compliance checker that you can configure with the, what you want to have happen. And there are some great things here. There's like Versetti, which Google makes, is Cloud Custodian from Capital One. There are efforts in this area, but they're having
Toto.
to like,
Great.
Toto, they're having to like write all these little plugins to be like, how do we adapt to everybody's different things? And to some degree, we'll have to do that for a while, but like maybe we could all just agree on certain things that we'll all do. Whether that's a format or a protocol or an API, we're being intentionally not describing the implementation yet, so that we can get to what are the most critical pain points, because this is such a vast space that if we don't focus, then we won't.
Right. Yeah, I'm dating myself, but I don't expect us to produce the next generation sort of cloud gold disk. Yeah, sorry, it's a terribly old reference. But we would definitely be informing such tools. I think that would be more appropriate that another group would take that on based on the work and the research and collaboration that we've done.
But yeah, and I'm also like, I have this secret. Now it's going to be not so secret.
We're recording this.
Working with the CNCF and the projects are very eager to find more users and more customers, and some of them have vendors involved. That if we through this, I believe that we might find some simple info. Oh look, 2 out of the 18 CNCF projects actually do the same thing. Mm-hmm. Maybe we could define a thing that all the CNCF projects do that it's just one small part of a compliance check, right? And then I think it would be fairly quickly adopted. Everybody could put on their roadmaps. If everybody agrees it's a good idea, we could say if you don't agree, let's change it, and start to build up that, because we have such an opportunity to do things across a wide array of open source projects because of this foundation. I think that's a really exciting opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for joining us and giving us a little bit of time for the intro. We have a deep dive session on Thursday. Please come and we'll have a bit more time to collaborate and discuss. And then we'd love to have you join us Fridays. We meet every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 Eastern, and we'd love to have your perspective as we go down this security journey together.
We also have a Slack channel on the CNCF Slack, and I think Dan and I can both hang out outside.
Absolutely.
If you want to
Yep.
chat more.
Thanks, everybody.